Hello and welcome to the Womxn Show. I'm Lenina Rassool, and today we are speaking about household affordability and the cost of living crisis in South Africa. Now, reports over the past few years have documented the rising cost of food prices alongside transport, electricity and much more, and its impact on the South African household. After the break, we are going to be speaking to journalist Crystal Orderson, who had followed Mavis Namba, who is a single mother and head of a household of 9, to see how they make it through the month on a single income. But before that, we are going to have a look at a short video on food insecurity. Let's have a look.
Despite hopes the world would emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic and food security would begin to improve, world hunger rose further in 2021. The prevalence of undernourishment jumped from 8% in 2019 to 9.8% in 2021. New figures estimate as many as 828 million people around the world faced hunger in 2021. This represents an increase of 150 million more people facing hunger in 2021 compared to 2019, the year before the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Projections suggest nearly 670 million people, or 8% of the world's population, will be facing hunger in 2030, which is the same projection from 2015, the launch year for the SDG 2030 agenda. Hunger continued to rise in Africa, Asia and Latin America and the Caribbean in 2021, but with somewhat slower increases than in 2019 to 2020. In 2021, hunger affected 278 million people in Africa, 425 million people in Asia, and 56.5 million in Latin America and the Caribbean. The ongoing war in Ukraine presents additional food security challenges. Ukraine and Russia are two of the biggest global producers of staple cereals, oilseeds and fertilizer. The conflict is disrupting supply chains and pushing up prices of grains, fertilizer and energy. Simulations of a severe export shortfall from these countries suggest an increase of up to 13 million in 2022 and 19 million more undernourished in 2023 respectively. In 2021, about 2.3 billion people around the world were moderately or severely food insecure. 11.7% of the global population faced food insecurity at severe levels. Globally, malnutrition in all its forms also remains a challenge, with almost 3.1 billion people unable to afford a healthy diet. 149.2 million children under age 5, or 22%, were affected by stunting, and 6.7% suffered from wasting. The actual figures are expected to be higher due to the effects of COVID-19. At the same time, 38.9 million children under 5, or 5.7%, are overweight. The effects of inflation on consumer food prices have increased the costs of healthy diets worldwide. In this challenging environment, policies aimed at bolstering food security and nutrition are more important than ever before. Governments can achieve more with the same public resources. Government support to food and agriculture, such as trade and market interventions, and fiscal subsidies to producers and consumers, can help improve the availability and affordability of healthy diets. Not only is much of the current support to agriculture not promoting the production of nutritious foods, it is also market distorting, not reaching many farmers, and hurts the environment. Repurposing policy support to food and agriculture to increase the availability of nutritious foods can have positive impacts on accessing better nutrition. The challenges we face are daunting, but concerted efforts to repurpose food and agricultural policy support and related spending can help make healthy diets less costly and more affordable for those most at risk.
That was a short video on food insecurity and food poverty. We are going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back. You're still watching The Womxn Show, and we are speaking about household affordability. Now, reports are showing that South Africa is in the middle of a cost of living crisis, and that the price of food baskets has gone up and people are struggling to afford the basics. This led to the publication Al Jazeera writing an article about how women are trying to afford household expenses on very little money. And the journalist who wrote that article is with us in studio today, Crystal Orderson, alongside Mavis Namba, who is the case study in the article and who has bravely opened up her budget for us to have a look at how you are affording to support a household of 9, is it?
Yes, 9 people.
9 people on your salary.
Yes.
Ladies, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Lenina, for having us.
So, Crystal, I wanted to start with you. You, alongside Mavis, wrote the article. Can you just tell us why did you write the article? What led to it? Why are we speaking about this?
So Al Jazeera, they've been able to try and track what it is, and how much people need to survive globally. So different parts of the world, and then they wanted a particular look in Africa and then South Africa. So I had to write a pitch like you do, and the story was commissioned. So essentially, what attracted me to it, that it is a partnership with your case study. So you literally go into the life of your character, which is Mavis, which is not easy, and you track the person for a month. So it's regular check-ins. Hey, Mavis, how are you? What have you been spending? And I don't think everybody wants to expose what they're earning and what they're spending on to not just a local audience, but a global audience. But I think it is about recognizing, Lenina, how the cost of living is impacting on the livelihoods of many, many people, and women in particular. So I have to again thank you to Mavis for allowing me, to tell her story. And what was really, I think part of it was that it was a partnership. So Mavis also got, the byline in the story, because it ultimately, I was just the narrator of the story of Mavis, and, how she's surviving and supporting 9 family members.
I love that. I love how you're calling it a partnership, because we know usually as journalists we go when we say we are telling somebody else's story. But Mavis, you were part of putting this whole story together, and it's also giving you credit for actually sharing your story. Now, I heard you sort of affirming when Crystal was saying that it's not easy to open up your finances to audiences, and this must have been sort of a difficult thing to do. I think all of us would feel quite, uncomfortable doing that. So what made you say yes to Crystal? What made you, open up those finances, and why do you think the story is important?
Thank you again. I think the story is more important because it happens to us. Like I'm talking about it's about myself, what I'm going through. As I say, we're 9 in the family, and then I must make it sure I support the whole family. And because my mother, she's also a pensioner, and then the prices of everything is going up every time, like water, electricity, food. So we look for specials. So the reason I say to Crystal, she can take me, because I want the other women also, or the other people, they can learn from me. You see, with the grace of God, I'm still surviving. Even though I earn not so much money, but I'm still surviving.
And I think, and I will say to the audience, we are all actually single mothers around this table supporting households. And so one of the things that always amazes me is that, and my mother was a single mother, that she made it work. Even if, one of the stories I love to tell is, even if we were having bread for supper, as kids, we didn't even realize that was a miracle in itself that we're having, it was just what it was. Mavis, I also want to ask, so, with me then in that role, often when women get together, we also talk about how hard it is. And is this a huge problem that you see amongst people in your circles? Are women specifically struggling?
I think it's more like women, because I'm also a single mother. I'm supporting I've got 2 kids. I support the kids by myself because the father, they just left to leave them. So I was struggling alone, as I say, by the grace, because I put God first, and there I'm still here. Like sometimes I don't even know where I'm going to get the money, because you must buy bread. The bread is expensive. I must go to, there's a place in nearby as a boxer, or I look for cheap, for cheap prices, because I can't afford them. Somalia, they're charging bread maybe 18 rand. And then if I go there, I buy 3 bread, I score, maybe I buy less, you see. So I think the women, they're more, we the one that struggle more, but we overcome. We overcome.
And this breed, I mean, it's a huge issue. And another story I often tell is, so when we were kids, my mom worked in a clothing factory, and we stayed in Kensington. And what we called it cheap bread, it was the baked bread, right? But it was further away up the road. And my brother and I were embarrassed to go and buy the cheap bread. We would actually literally empty out our school haversacks and then put that on and slink in there at the butchers where they sold it. And so trying to sort of find those specials, even to afford the bread, even to make the rand stretch. Crystal, you mentioned in the article some of the statistics and reports. One was the Household Affordability Index. The other was the Discovery and Visa Spend Trend reports. And these spoke specifically about a cost of living crisis. And I wanted you, if you could explain to us what that means.
I think basically people are not having enough money to buy food. So people are having to make choices. Are we having 1 meal a day, or we're having 2 meals a day? Which also means people are eating what's there. So cheap polony, because that is perhaps a source of protein. It's white bread, which is not very nutritious, but how can you be nutritious when electricity prices are going up, when food prices from week to week, and the Pietermaritzburg, kind of organization that does this affordability index also tells us. So of course these statistics are very important, but we know the reality is people are unable to afford. So for instance, last week we saw Stats SA telling us 14% in terms of just, inflation. So that's a lot, Nina. And what does it practically mean? It means today you might pay 40 Rand for chicken. Next week it's 50 Rand. That's a 25% increase. Mavis takes the taxi. 1 week she pays X, the next week she pays Y. Because again, taxis are unregulated. They do not get a subsidy from government. And so you're open to the market. So what does the market say? Petrol prices increased, a kilometer is added. Then it's electricity. And Mavis in particular, which was one of the elements of the story, electricity. We can't even explain. That's if you're lucky, if you get electricity. 50 Rand gives you 5 units. What can you do with 5 units? And so literally people are having to make choices every day. So I think middle class people are making that choices, and working class people. And I think the reality is, if we actually unpack it further, Nina, people are starving. Kids are not getting enough to eat. We're having a whole set of socioeconomic challenges, including stunting from health. And so I don't see anything changing. I just think we're going to have more and more cost of living crises taking place in different ways. Right now, it's affordability, and I don't think people can afford just simply basic things.
And as I was reading through actually the Household Affordability Index, and I remember last year on the 2022 report, there was a press release saying also one of the things it's going to lead to is an increase in crime. So we're going to have a lot of people who do not have, who are then being pushed into, I'm assuming, robbing other people in order to get, and sometimes that's also food. Mavis, I also wanted to ask you, so one of the things you wrote, I think there were 5 questions in the article, and one of the things of what is your biggest worry within the household? And one of the things you worry about is not having enough food to last the month. And this is quite a stressful thing. You are the breadwinner. You have, even when I explain to people, the buck stops with me. So if I don't have, there isn't. And that is a lot of stress to be under. Does that, how does that affect you in terms of, just your mental health? Just your stress, anxiety?
Thanks again. It stressed me a lot because, as I say, I'm the only one that's working, so I must know. And They pay me weekly. So I must know every day I put money for bread one side and electricity, everything, taxi fare, everything, so that we won't run out of food. So it stressed me a lot. But as I say in the beginning, by the grace of God, I'm surviving. I'm a qualified hairdresser, but I don't work as a qualified now. I'm an assistant. Sometimes I don't do anything for the clients, but the client will come to me. They will just bless me, give me some money. Sometimes I'm worried where I'm going to get the money for electricity, or where I'm going to get the transport money. Someone just give me. So I thank God for that. I think I'm blessed.
And Mavis, I want to ask you, what are your main expenses? And I know in the report one of the things was transport, which is like, 70 Rand a day.
Yes, it's
right?
more than 70 because it's 20 and 10, yes, 70.
So in this house, what would you say are your biggest expenses?
The biggest, it's the food. The food and the electricity.
Electricity and the transport.
Transport.
And those are the ones that you put away.
Because I don't worry about the clothes. I'm still wearing my old clothes. As long as my family, I love my mother, I love my family, as long as they've got food on the table.
And so I did also want to ask, so one of the things that come up often with finances and they struggle, so you're a family of 9, so already that's a lot of tension, right? Just being able to live in a house with 9 people. I also grew up in a big family. Does this also sort of affect the family dynamics? Does it, is it a lot of tension around money when you have everyone in there worrying about meals, worrying about stuff? And I think I'm talking about the mental health of your family also.
No, as I say, because I'm the only one that's working. My mother, she gets a grant money, so she also helps.
Yes.
And my niece, she also gets, she's got epilepsy, she also helps. But I'm making sure, yes, I've got stress. Sometimes you stress because you're worried where you're going to get this. But in the meantime, you just pray whatever, and then you got it. So they're also helping me. Yes, it's stress because it's electricity, it's food, it's
and epilepsy, so that's a medical expense as well,
also,
right?
She's an epilepsy, so she also gets the grant money. So she also put by for food. My son is also on drug. He was at the Falkenberg Hospital. So I'm also looking for the rehab for him. And you also need lots of bread. I must buy lots of bread, like 2 breads a day, because he eats a lot. He's on medication. But I apply a grant for him. I'm still waiting for them to reply.
So, Crystal, I want to ask, one of the things that where we got to in the article was also asking what is Mavis' tips, right? And how do we have to, you said that people have to change the way that they spend, but I also wonder, from your perspective and as a journalist, and you just immersed yourself, you spoke about the cost of living crisis. It's difficult to put a positive spin on an article like this, and I think I wanted to ask whether there is anything that you got out of that.
I think, firstly, it's to tell the story and to give, people like Mavis a voice.
Yeah.
So I think that was important, and that it was a partnership. So it was also the first time working on a particular, kind of story where it's not just about you, but it is about the person. Because ultimately, if Mavis didn't trust me or allow me to see what she spends, what she gets and how she survives, I think that is also quite important. But I think it is highlighting that, and often, I sometimes think governments get very dismissive of the reality of the cost of living crisis. So, an announcement is made on an electricity increase or this, but it really impacts on people's livelihoods. And when we think of access to power or the power crisis that we're having, it's really impacting on livelihoods, because ultimately, if the retailer has to pay more to keep the bread fresh, they're going to put the cost on us. And I often think there's almost like we hear the kind of politicking and the fighting happening, and it annoys me, because ultimately, millions of other South Africans are struggling to survive. And I often think there's a disjoint between policy and practice.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there is no way of putting a positive spin on the story, but it is about highlighting the real struggle it is for many families, not just on the Cape Flats, but across South Africa, to survive, you know, and I think that for me was important to highlight.
I mean, that's a great thing to highlight. And I will say, you know, it's just bringing up for me when I did some work around the local elections and the importance of having also women's voices in Parliament, women's voices in influencing policy, just to try to understand the sort of things that you are speaking about, Mavis. Often that is what's missing from the practices because there isn't context for what it looks like, on the ground. I'm going to ask also Crystal, because what was interesting, and I say this because there is, I think, a lot of, when we speak about money, specifically, we speak about money, we can speak about unemployment, we can speak about, but I think a lot of judgment that's often directed towards lower income households, right? So I love that you opened with that Mavis sometimes, you know, every couple of months buys herself lipstick, right? This is the Womxn Show. We have to speak about, when I asked you about your mental health, Mavis, I was thinking about sometimes when you are struggling this much to provide for a household at 9, it can feel like there is no joy, and all you're doing is like a machine getting up in the morning, going to earn this money, and they spend the same money that you earn, and there's nothing. And so you opened up with the lipstick, and you also mentioned sometimes you treat yourself. It made me think about my mom used to, sometimes when she would get her wages, I'd go with her to ShopRite, and she'd buy for the two of us like parcel of fish and chips, and we'd eat it as we walked across the field home. Those little things are important. And I just want to ask also, was that, you know, strategic in highlighting that?
Yeah, absolutely, because I mean, we're all human, and you know, like Mavis likes lipstick, and that is her treat, because here you work, and you know, I know, as single parents, we work, and we never think, oh, what about us? You know, can we get lipstick? Because it's also showing the human side that yes, we work to survive, but there's also the person who likes lipstick, and I thought that was an important element to it, you know, that it's just like survival, but it's also about Mavis likes lipstick, and here she's wearing a red lipstick.
But I changed, sorry to interrupt, but I changed now with the lipstick. I love the pink lipstick, but there's a lady where we've got the salon. She's also a godsend. I think Crystal knows about it. She always gives me clothes for my granddaughter.
Oh, wonderful.
Clothes for me. But one day I asked her, what can I do for you? Can I just come and do your windows? She said, no, just for you. So now Olivia, my boss, she told me about the story that Crystal did for me. She came with a bag full of makeup. Expensive lipstick. That's why I'm wearing
the blessings
in my room now. So it's all the blessing. I'm thanking God for that.
That is wonderful. And I wanted to ask you, so in those ways, because I wanted to ask you, are those the ways that you know, we spoke about mental health and stress and anxiety and trying to make it, and are those the little ways that you find joy, even within this process?
Sorry, what say again?
That you find joy.
I find joy everywhere, like even when I'm at work, at home, I'm always happy. I'm happy with what I earn, what I've got.
Yes.
I don't want someone's things. I'm happy with my own things that I've got. And I praise God for that.
And that's wonderful. It's wonderful that we can find the joy and we can find the gratitude. And so I think we are out of time for this interview, ladies, but I want to thank you so much for joining us. Are there any last words to the audience?
Thank you for highlighting the issue, Lenina. I think that's important, is that we get the story out so that other women who are watching, you know, they don't have to be shy. We're sharing the same story.
Yes, and we are not alone. And I just want to bring out, just before we go to break, I want to say, you know, Mavis's one tip that I try to live by also is do not shop when you are hungry, right?
Yes,
Do not shop when you're hungry.
You must write down what you're shopping, what you want, or you're going to buy the whole ShopRite or Pick and Buy.
Exactly.
That is what I do.
So thank you so much. We are going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Womxn Show, and we are speaking about household affordability and rising food prices. And joining me now in studio is Palesa Ramolefo, who is the campaign lead on Food Prices Must Fall, a new campaign by Amandla.mobi. Palesa, thank you for joining us and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So, Palesa, before the break, we were speaking to a mother who is a breadwinner in a household of 9 and how she manages financially. And one of the things she mentioned was that the price of bread just within the last year has almost doubled and how difficult that has been. So, Amandla.mobi, through its Food Prices Must Fall campaign, is highlighting the rise in costs, which I think I did is, the last time it rose so much was like 2009. Can you tell us a little bit about this campaign? Because I think a lot of us are sort of seeing this in our budget, but not understanding what's happening. And a lot of the time I feel like we're made to feel as if we are spending too much, but actually food prices are rising. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, okay, so the story shared by the mother you spoke to is unfortunately the shared story of so many South Africans. And South Africa's hunger and nutrition crisis is not new, right? So even before COVID-19, around 27% of children under the age of 5 years old were not growing as they should, and this is due to chronic undernourishment, and this is without a doubt getting worse. Like, we are seeing it on the news, we are seeing it in our communities. So the current alarming increases in basic food prices, coupled with other issues, signal that turning the tide is even more urgent right now.
Thank you. I mean, so much, and that's so true. I mean, the statistics are alarming. And so, food poverty or food insecurity is not a new issue. We know it's been, going on for a long time. And what these rises, I think, indicate is that it's getting worse. But also, there are reasons that it's getting worse. Like, it's showing in the data, it's showing in the statistics. People are coming out and they're saying this. Why did Amandla.mobi launch a campaign around this, and what are you hoping to achieve with the campaign?
Okay, so can I just start quickly by just giving you an example of just basically how supermarkets can price gouge, and then just quickly go into the campaign that we started. So one example of price gouging happened in 2019 with the cost of buying bread. So what we saw is that the price of buying bread for wholesalers went down, but supermarkets continued to charge us the same price, because prices are supposed to go down if they go down for wholesalers. And so because Amandla campaigns on grants, a lot of social grant issues, a lot of our members came to us and said, well, we are campaigning for this, but the price of the 350 is not going to be enough for us to afford food prices. And so we're like, actually, if we are asking the government to increase social grants, but the price of food keeps going up, then it just invalidates these grant increases, and which is why we had to start this food prices campaign. And one thing that we also saw in 2021 is that supermarkets were charging us to buy a dozen of eggs, 35 rands. But when they bought it from farmers, it was only 17 rands. And so we were like, this huge price increase is unjustified. So which is why we had to start the food price campaign.
Wow. I mean, that's insane. And we've seen it. We see it when you go to the supermarkets. I just want to ask Palesa, so we assume that the process from the food being produced to getting to the supermarket, and we assume that there's a fair process and there are valid reasons for the prices. And so I know you can just explain quickly what price gouging is.
So price gouging is when supermarkets unjustifiably pass down a price that is unjustified to consumers. So for example, you look at fresh produce, right? Vegetables and fruits. Yeah. It makes absolutely no sense why we need to get charged extreme amounts of money because there is no processing costs, there are no manufacturing costs. All you need to do is just transport it or put a sticker on it. So it makes absolutely no sense why we are getting charged extra amounts for it. So that's
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So I was reading through the campaign page, and there's a petition as well that people can sign. And what was interesting to me is that Amandla.mobi compared the rise in food prices for the high cost of data. So a campaign you guys did about the high cost of mobile data years ago. That also sparked a campaign called data prices must fall, or data must fall. I remember that. And it resulted in the lowering of prices of mobile data. And I actually went back and I looked, there was a whole lot of stuff. There were protests, there was, court action, there was an inquiry by the Competitions Commission, which is also happening now with food prices. Tell us how this is similar.
Okay, so yeah, consistent with our own findings and the submissions that we made to the Competition Commission, mobile network operators were found to unjustifiably charge low-income consumers much more for data. So this resulted in the recommendations that mobile networks drop their data prices by between 30% to 50%, which subsequently happened at a later stage. This is an example of how big businesses have taken advantage of consumers, right? And which is not unique to mobile network operators. We've also seen it with some big food businesses in the industry, in the food industry. And yeah, they continue to use the same tactics that mobile network operators used.
So, Palesa, what does it mean now? I mean, that was obviously a big thing with the Data Must Fall movement that initiated a lot, that gave legitimacy and credibility to the argument that they were unjustifiably, charging high prices. What does it mean now that the Competitions Commission has got involved? Is this a good thing for us as consumers?
Yes, it's a good thing. I believe it's a good thing because we need more regulators like the Competition Commission, and them stepping up and holding people to account is huge. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to drop names, but we saw how this caused an uproar with Pick n Pay. The CEO of Pick n Pay was not happy with this, and that signals something. Why aren't you happy? Because the Competition Commission is saying prices don't make sense and they're just gonna monitor. So why is this an issue?
So can I ask you, so the Competition Commission is involved now. What is this process going to look like? So what are they actually going to do?
Yeah, so I think just leaning into our experience with the Competition Commission when it came to mobile network operators, what they usually do is that right now they have a market inquiry that is going on. So what they're doing is just monitoring the prices and monitoring if basically from manufacturers to retailers, just basically monitoring the whole food system and monitoring prices and whether we are getting charged fairly and whether it is justified. So right now we have the market inquiry, and then there's going to be a process where we have to come in and make comments as consumers and as organizations or as people, and basically show the Competition Commission whether we are being charged fairly. Then afterwards, we usually see that the Competition Commission has to make recommendations to retailers to say, drop your prices or your prices are okay. So right now, we're just in the process of monitoring where the Competition Commission is just looking to see and monitoring if we are being charged correctly.
Thank you. And that's so great to know, I think, for us, so that we can also monitor this process, which really brings me to my next question, is that often we feel really powerless against big business and big organizations. We feel there's nothing we can do to sort of control prices, to control, anything within this process. I mean, I remember for myself, struggling because data was so expensive, but never really thinking there was anything that I could do about it, and not even considering sort of anything until the campaign came out and the reports came out and the campaign was there. So how, as citizens, I think, what can we do? What are platforms available? I mean, including Amandla.mobi, because how do we get involved with the campaign? But also outside of the campaign, just generally, what can we do to better engage with these types of things that affect our lives?
Okay, so yeah, we encourage everyone, obviously, to visit www.amandla.mobi to support this food prices campaign, and to also follow us online at Amandla.mobi to find out what else they can do. And can I just repeat it again? www.amandla.mobi to support this campaign, as well as our social media handles at Amandla.mobi. So we need to reject that in a country that can feed everyone, millions go hungry. We also encourage people to report businesses suspected of price gouging and ripping off consumers to regulations like the Competition Commission and others when necessary. So yeah, ensuring that food is accessible and affordable to everyone is all our business. So we need to constantly look for platforms and rely on the resources and tools that the Competition Commission provides for us to hold retailers to account.
Palesa, can I ask you a question? So I noticed that some things like, I'm doing my shopping and I noticed something has gone up sort of exponentially. It's huge. And it wasn't like that. If we notice things that are sort of out of the ordinary, it's weird. Can I email the Competition Commission myself?
Yes, you can. And I think a much easier way to also do it is just to tag them on social media if you do have social media, but also maybe if you don't have access to social media, give them a call and just say, I have this complaint. So they do have a complaint number, which I don't have, but yeah, you can give them a call and say, listen, I'm noticing that this used to be this amount and now all of a sudden we are here. And I think the quickest way is to do it on social media, just to take a picture and just say, listen, this is increasing rapidly and I don't know why.
No, that's great. And so that's a really actionable thing we can do. I also just want to clarify the campaign that's running with Amandla.mobi right now, which is called Food Prices Must Fall. And then people can go to your website, they can see it on social media. There's a petition element to it, right? So we're hoping that people also go on and sign the petition.
Yes. So basically, the petition is calling for retailers to open up their books. We are saying that you have a history of price gouging, and we can't just trust at face value that the prices you are giving us are justified. So yeah, the campaign is calling for retailers that is one of the demands for retailers to open up their books. And so yeah, it does have a petition element where people can sign on, and what we are hoping to do is that once we have collected enough signatures, we can go outside of food retailers, because in South Africa we do have a right to protest, and just basically say, please, we need you to lower down the prices, because we have seen this and this and this. We have seen customers complaining that food prices are way too high.
And so just to clarify again, by open up their books, on the one hand, we're saying the Competition Commission is monitoring sort of prices and so forth externally, right, as monitoring the market. But opening up the books means we want to see some of your financials, because we want to see whether those prices can be justified within your sort of financial books.
Yes, exactly. Because excessive and unfair price increases are they're just unjustified with the cost of living right now. So, which is why that is one of our demands, to say, open up your books so that regulators like the Competition Commission and organizations like us, as well as consumers in their own rights, can monitor food prices and ensure that these increases are justified. Because we are buying from them and we are spending so much amount of money every month on them. So the least they can do is that show us your finances.
So, Palesa, before we go, I mean, that's great. But before we go, I just want to ask, we came in from the break, and you were speaking about how the lady that we spoke to, who was in the featured in the Al Jazeera article, and her story is very commonplace. Are you hearing similar things? Are you seeing, so the advocacy that Amandla.mobi does, and you work with a lot of people on the ground, you're talking about working with people who, in terms of social grants, are you seeing a lot of this? And have you seen an increase also in food insecurity, I think, just through your work?
Oh, no, definitely. We've seen, people are relying on grants, and which is why we couldn't understand why the 350 processes were so weak and why people were not getting the 350. Because, unemployment, the pandemic, which we still feel to this day, and many other issues that we are facing in South Africa contribute to all this food insecurity. So the grant, although it's not much, no one can live on 350. It closes a certain part of a gap. Like, people are able to at least buy bread, just, get by. So yeah, we are seeing so many of our members write to us daily, on Facebook, via SMS, via WhatsApp. People just don't have food.
And then I think I read on the campaign page also that with the 350, and you said this earlier actually, with it, yes, people already don't have enough money for food. Food insecurity is already a huge issue. But with the increase in prices, so for instance, if your bread is costing you 20 Rand or more, you are buying much less bread. And the point of the grant is also, to a certain extent, to be able to afford at least staples so that people are at least eating throughout the month. And so this is something that we really need to think about. And I think I want to encourage everybody to just go onto Amandla.mobi's site and to go and have a look at the campaign and to sign your name if you can, and help us to take an active stance against food insecurity and against the rising prices. So, Palesa, I want to say thank you very, very much for joining us. Do you have any last words to the people out there?
Yeah, I just want to encourage people to hold retailers accountable and hold businesses that practice unfair price gouging accountable. It is within your rights, and you cannot be charged unjustified prices. It makes absolutely no sense. No one has money right now, so hold them accountable.
Okay, thank you very much, Palesa. We are going to take a short break, but we'll be back with more after this.
Welcome back. You're still watching The Womxn Show, and we are speaking about household affordability and the cost of living crisis in South Africa. Now, we've been having a great conversation, and it's been really interesting looking at the rise in prices in food, in transport, electricity, and so much more. One of the solutions that has come up and been proposed, looking at food insecurity in particular, is greater investment in women in the agricultural sector. We are going to have a look at a short video that explains a bit more about that. Let's have a look.
Almost 4 billion people rely on agri-food systems for their livelihoods.
Half of them are women prevented from realizing their potential,
Held back by inequality and discrimination,
marginalized,
and denied agency.
working in poorer conditions with lower wages, carrying a greater burden of care and unpaid work.
Women have always worked hard for agri-food systems.
It's time to make agri-food systems work better for women.
Greater equality means
Greater resilience, greater social, economic,
and environmental sustainability
empowering women and achieving gender equality,
could bring huge gains,
better agricultural production,
and child nutrition,
food security for 45 million more people,
resilience for 235 million more people,
global GDP increased by $1 trillion.
Change is within reach.
women need more access to and control over livestock, water, and seeds.
And the land, technology, and the finance needed to grow their livelihoods. Eliminating discrimination.
Brings tangible benefits.
Intervention is essential at every level of agri-food systems.
Engaging with men and boys makes change happen faster.
Changing national policies and social norms is vital.
Ensuring that women have a greater voice in policy and decision making.
Collecting high-quality data.
Can measure progress towards equality.
Working with groups and collective action.
Gives women greater access to technology.
And improves resilience for whole communities. It's time to make the change.
That was a short video on how greater investment on women in the agricultural sector can help us tackle food insecurity. And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for joining us. I'm Lenina Rassool. Goodbye.